Hello, and welcome to Green Coffee Summit. My name is Vicente Partida, and I am the Community Experience Officer at the Specialty Coffee Association. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us here at Green Coffee Summit. We've learned a lot today about the European coffee market, but also what's happening elsewhere. In this next hour of Green Coffee Summit, we'll be talking to three coffee professionals, buyers and sellers in this market, about their personal experiences in the green coffee space. We'll be asking questions of, how do consumer preferences differ at the national level in Europe? Are there any trends that cross cultural and political boundaries? What are some of the important similarities and differences in the types of attributes that European consumers value in their coffee? And before I introduce you to my three panelists today, let's have a quick look at the data on coffee consumption trends in Europe and the UK. I'm hoping that everybody can see the slides here. We drew a lot of the data that we're about to present here from Euromonitor, a global market research firm that the SCA has worked with for many years. And we complement what we know from our community surveys with Euromonitor's national level consumption data. We also reviewed reports written by CBI EU, the Center for the Promotion of Imports from Developing Countries, and the German Coffee Association. So, if we were to look at Europe as a single coffee consuming market, it would be the world's largest, as well as the largest green coffee importer, and the region with the highest per capita coffee consumption worldwide. Europe is also the largest market for certified coffees. The European market is dominated by a few large multinational roasting and grinding companies, including Nestle, JDE Peet's, Melita, Lavazza, Starbucks, and Strauss Coffee. From inside the coffee industry, most of us don't see Europe as a single market, of course. We see things at the country level or even at the level of a single city within a country. When I tend to think of what I know about the UK market, I tend to think about London, which is where I live. But we won't be able to examine the coffee culture of every country in the region during our time here today. So we're going to focus on a few key markets. In this case, Germany and the UK. And we'll seek to understand a few important coffee purchasing and coffee drinking trends that extend to other parts of Europe and that will likely tell us about what's happening beyond Europe. In terms of green coffee imports, Germany is Europe's all-round most important coffee player, but this is down to its role in re-exports and roasting, with Poland, the Netherlands, and France being major destinations for Germany's coffee exports. And what about Italy, the home of espresso? Italy has a strong coffee roasting industry as the second largest importer of green coffee, due in large part to companies like Lavazza, Segafredo, and Illy. It's also worth noting that Eastern Europe is a fast-growing market for coffee exporters, especially Poland. Looking at the UK coffee market, we see that home consumption of retail coffee, which in this context refers to outlets like grocery stores that are selling bags of coffee as opposed to cups of coffee, retail coffee remains strong with volumes higher than what we saw in 2019. This indicates that some of the habits that consumers established during the pandemic have continued, which is quite interesting. There's been a focus on at-home consumption, even from high street and specialty brands, which has resulted in new product developments and also enhanced direct-to-consumer sales models, such as specialty coffee subscriptions. The value that consumers place on convenience will likely contribute to an increase in demand for services like subscriptions, and this is expected to boost online sales for the channel in the future. At the same time, we see a trend toward premiumization across subcategories of coffee consumption, including those where convenience has been the primary driver, like fresh ground coffee pods, very popular in the UK. One more development worth noting is the blurred lines between retail and food service, where cups of coffee would be the sales unit. In the UK, we see brands joining forces to generate sales in an uncertain environment. For example, Marks & Spencer introduced 30 of its food products to Costa Coffee outlets nationwide in the spring. Let's move on to Germany. In Germany, the category of specialist coffee and tea shops performed better than other food service business categories like bars and pubs and cafes. They experienced a negligible decline in outlet numbers, but they still experienced a 33% decline in terms of sales value. Historically, specialist coffee and tea shops in Germany have competed directly with low-cost coffee offerings from bakery chains, convenience stores, and other limited service players. But increasingly, the competition comes from their peers, higher priced, more local players, as German consumers have shown a preference for higher quality options from unique brands. Multinational chains such as Starbucks, Coffee Fellows, and Dunkin' Donuts may find themselves caught in the middle of the cheap and convenient coffee offerings from limited service chains on the one hand, and the growing availability of high quality coffee beverage offerings geared towards consumers willing to spend more on them. German consumers are notoriously price sensitive, but the strong performance of specialist coffee and tea shops demonstrates that they are willing to spend money on coffee. And as private label producers have increased their prices, there has been no notable shift away from more expensive brands. At the national level in Germany, one of the major trends to emerge from the macro data over 2020 and 2021 is the growing popularity of espresso, which is not new to the market, but has always been dwarfed by the consumption of filter coffee. There's also a rapidly growing demand for plant-based milks in Germany, with oat milk being a particular favorite alternative to cow's milk. So, it takes months to collect, process, and publish the data from reports like the ones that we've covered and that we've used to compile this overview. So we're inevitably a few months behind today's trends when we look only at the macro level picture. Based on the conversations that we're having with professionals at the local level, it is possible to forecast some of the factors that will be impacting businesses in the coming year, including in Europe, the EU Green Deal, which seeks to change existing norms to make businesses and supply chains more sustainable through higher standards for social and environmental sustainability in production and the processing of goods and services. This EU Green Deal will also inevitably result in an increased demand for information on production and processing practices from regulators and consumers to brands, and from brands to their suppliers. We can expect also an increased cost of transitioning to new models of sustainable production as a result. As we noted earlier, Europe is a huge market for coffees that have achieved some kind of sustainability certification, including Fair Trade, Rainforest Alliance, 4C, and Organic. But as we have heard from speakers at other SCA events, the supply of certified products outpaces the demand, and consumers are struggling with label fatigue, leading to slower growth, though to be fair, still growth. Brexit. If you live in the UK, you're probably tired of this word. The United Kingdom's departure from the European Union will continue to affect coffee companies in and suppliers to the UK as trade deals are renegotiated, and uncertainty about the timing and degree of the effects extends from the UK across the region. Another challenge to anyone doing business in the region right now is inflation, coupled with dramatic swings in currency valuation in the case of the UK, which is driving the cost of goods up for many roasters and retailers who hesitate to pass those costs along to their customers. Right before starting Green Coffee Summit today, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom resigned. Last I checked, the currency was rallying, but you never know where things are going to go from here. Of course, uncertainty goes both ways, presenting potential opportunities as well as challenges. In the UK, coffee is expected to continue to perform well in retail and food service settings alike, as consumers in the UK are expected to be willing to pay extra in line with the healthy living trends, and the strong premiumization trend in coffee. As for Germany, the effects of label fatigue have been offset by the fact that the pandemic has accelerated demand for more sustainable products, which is particularly benefiting organic options within hot drinks and other beverages. This trend is expected to continue, with organically produced coffee gaining further share from non-certified options. So, all right, that's the presentation. Let me go back to the camera over here. Now that we've established some common reference points for the European and the UK coffee markets, we're going to talk more specifically about what coffee professionals are seeing and doing right now to both respond to consumer desires and to drive them. So let me introduce you to our three panelists today. Let me change my screen over here. Okay. With us today are Michael Mamo, Managing Director of Addis Exporter PLC based in Ethiopia. Hello, Michael.
Hello, Vincentine. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Also with us is Philip van der Goltz, Managing Partner at List & Biesler based in Germany. Hello, Philip.
Hello, Vicente. Thanks for the invite.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, Philip. And we have with us Freda Yuan, Director of Coffee for Origin Coffee Roasters based in the UK. Hi, Freda.
Hi, Vicente. How's it going?
Good to see you. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Let me just move you guys over here on my screen because I can't see you well. All right. So our attendees have access to your bios, and my colleagues will share a link to them in the chat so folks can get in touch with you if they'd like. But I would like to ask you to introduce yourself to our audience. And of course, we only have a couple of minutes, but I want to hear, I would like for you to tell us a little bit about you, your role at your company, what your company does, and specifically what kind of business you do in the European/UK market, and where do you primarily do business, and what type of actors in the industry. So I'm going to start with Michael.
Hello?
Yeah, Michael, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you, and thank you everyone tuning in. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Michael Mamo. I'm the MD of Addis Exporter, a family-owned green coffee exporting company based in Ethiopia. We've been around for 50 years now. I oversee coffee operations from working with smallholder coffee farmers in a service provider role, running washing stations and dry stations, dry milling operations in Addis, as well as overseeing export and marketing work. We primarily export to UK, Germany, Belgium. For the most part, we're dealing with traders and importers, more B2B business currently.
Very good. Thank you, Michael. Thank you. Philip, let's hear from you.
Yeah, well, thank you also for the invitation to be here and to say hello to a lot of people which I can't see. So I hope nobody is falling asleep while we do our little presentation here. Well, my name is Philip van der Goltz. I'm the managing partner, one of the managing partners at List & Biesler. We are a green coffee trading house specialized in high quality coffees, and we've been doing this for over 120 years now. We import coffees from all over the world, and we basically bring them to our customers all over the world. Again, we have our headquarters here in Hamburg, but we also have a very nice office in Miami in the US and another one in Sydney, Australia. All our colleagues are happy to talk to potential buyers in case they need some green coffee. I'm in charge of the marketing parts here at List & Biesler, also the sustainability components, which we have developed quite substantially over the past few years, and also on the whole part concerning digitalization and alike. We are one of the few coffee importers offering full-fledged online shop for roasters. So please come and visit our website, and hope you will find and like things over there. Besides of that, I have a kind of a split personality, as I'm also a consultant and author, working together with the United Nations ITC with a fantastic team. We have just a year ago basically finished the new 4th edition of the Coffee Guide. For those who don't know it, it's a fantastic publication, one of the most downloaded publications regarding coffee. So please check it out on ITC's website, you will find there the freshest downloadable version. It's 250 plus pages full of knowledge. So have a look at that. And yeah, I think that's from my side. Happy to go into more details in a second.
Thank you, Philip. It is a great resource, and I'm sure my colleagues will link to it in the chat. Thank you very much, Philip. Freda, let's hear from you.
Thank you, Vicente. Hello, everyone. My name is Freda Yuan. Thank you, SCA, for inviting me to this great event. I work for Origin Coffee Roasters, that is based in the UK. We are a specialty coffee roasters that has been roasting 17 years ago. Majority of our coffee is worked directly with the coffee producers based in Nicaragua, El Salvador, and Brazil. And we work largely with exporters bringing in coffee into the UK. And our customer base are wholesale, online, and then we have 5 cafes in the UK. And I have to say, Philip, I used to read your contribution, I think, because it's such a great work and I learned so much from it. It's nice to be here with you today.
That's lovely. Thank you, Freda, and thanks to all three of you for joining us today. So let's get started. Yeah, I mean we're getting started. We're already started, but let's. In the presentation earlier, we talked about how Europe. If you looked at Europe as a single market, you know, it's the largest coffee market as well as the largest green coffee importer, and the largest per capita coffee consumption worldwide. And I'm interested in understanding how each of you and your companies approach opportunities in Europe and the UK. So Philip, I'm going to start with you. From your perspective at List & Biesler, as a coffee importer, what are some of the key opportunities that you see in the European coffee market?
It's a super question, I have to say, because yeah, there is a huge opportunity in the European market, but keeping in mind that it's not one country, it's a lot of different countries. So it's immensely diverse. And I think the interesting part here to see is that there is a huge and very old coffee culture and also appreciation for coffee. And the competition inside Europe is, I think, compared to other.
We'll put a pause on that. We'll come back to Philip. Michael, let me go to you. When we talked, when I approached you about joining us on this panel, you spoke to me about how you've had to diversify your business, and that these days you're working more and more with individual producers and producer groups to connect them to sellers. Where in Europe are you seeing the most opportunities for Ethiopian coffee?
So just a little context. Since I moved back to Ethiopia in 2004, the Ethiopian coffee industry has changed dramatically. The introduction of the Ethiopian Commodity Exchange, where ECX shook the industry as traceability was a major challenge of the system. The shortage of forex introduced new players who would sometimes sell coffee or other export commodities at a loss to be able to earn forex for their import business. That's mainly due to the lack of foreign currency, and to limit coffee exporters from exporting coffee at a loss to earn foreign currency for their business, the Ethiopian Coffee Tea Authority and the National Bank established a directive to fix the minimum coffee export price. And that was based on a global weighted average for different grades. For us as ID's exporter, as we are for the most part a green exporting coffee company, it became challenging to make a profit by just exporting coffee the same old way, meaning purchasing coffee from the exchange. So we need to have a way to have better control of quality, processing, traceability, and also the narrative. So we had to, the first thing we did to change our approach was investing in the coffee regions, establishing washing and dry stations, offering different processes from wash to natural honey process, anaerobic, day-lot separation with farmer groups, focusing even on packaging, which is really important to keep quality intact. And for the past 4 years, we've been working with smallholder coffee farmers in a transparent manner which empowers farmers. Ownership is maintained because they're the exporter of their coffees and they receive more of the revenues. So we're offering these farmers agronomy training, business skills, marketing, quality control, milling, packaging, logistics, and documentation. And now, just to scale up this business, which we're finding more people want these kind of coffees, we're working. We're teaming up with Argentina Coffee Market, which was established by my good friend and ex-Sucafina employee named Matthew Thornton. So Argentina Coffee Market, which will be the largest digital marketplace in Ethiopia, focusing on smallholder coffee farmers. The whole system was designed in Ethiopia by Ethiopians. So I think it's really important to have local solutions for local problems. We're starting to get more and more inquiries from roasters that want to buy directly from producers. And we're seeing that, in North America, I also traveled to a lot of cafes, but we're seeing similar issues from smallholder farmers, as well as smaller importers and roasters. That's finance, access to finance, as well as good rates, logistics. We're seeing the lack of market exposure and market access, scalability, and these are really the same problems for a lot of different players in the sectors. So the Argentina Coffee Market is a good solution for the market access for smallholder farmers. We're seeing a huge opportunity for growth. Also, the question importers and roasters are asking us in terms of how much does a farmer earn. There's full transparency in the system where we have 0% access to the farmer's payment. The farmer is the exporter of his or her coffee. We're just providing a service. It's a transparent service, and most of the demand that we're seeing for the smallholder coffee project is mainly in the United Kingdom and Western Europe, Switzerland, Netherlands, France, so far.
Very good. Right. United Kingdom, Switzerland. What were the other countries that you mentioned?
Netherlands, France.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Mike. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
We're going to come back to you, Philip, because you dropped off for us. But let me go to Freda, and then we'll come back to you, Philip. Freda, Origin, the company that you work for, is a UK-based company. So let's zoom in on the UK market. And from your perspective, serving both retail and wholesale customers, broadly speaking, what are some of the main areas of focus and growth for Origin?
Yeah, for us, from the past few years, is our online purchase has been increased drastically. That creates a big gap for us, a big opportunity for us to come into and then sort of like reintroduce customer specialty coffee drinking from home. And what does that mean? We started to sell more coffee brewing equipment. We managed to sell some espresso machines at home as well, which is really and engaging and also exciting. And then we started to sell more subscription coffee, like you said, Vicente, but also particularly coffee pots. We see really big trends about coffee pots coming in, easy drinking. I think this opportunity brought us to another spectrum of creating more categories for our customers. They started to really care about the quality of the coffee and potentially the story of the coffee as well. That help us to start more of an engagement with our face-to-face online customer. Comparing to the cafe is a little bit different. Our wholesale customer had a little bit pause during pandemic, but we do know some of our customers are starting their web shops as well and starting to selling online. So I think mainly for the past 2 years is mostly online business. Though recently the business started to come back to the cafe because everyone started to get back to their normal life. But I do believe that the online is still a great opportunities for us to grow, and at the same time, the cafe.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's interesting. So your experience seems to reflect almost kind of perfectly the data that we were discussing in the first 10 minutes.
Yeah, what's more interestingly, we have customers open in the city. There are Tuesday to Thursday sales, 3-day sales, because the customer would work at home on Monday and Friday, but only go to the office for 3 days. But their sales for those 3 days are the same as pre-pandemic time for the spread of 5 days weekdays, or even more.
Thank you very much, Freda. Philip, let's come back to you. I'm going to ask you the question so you can start over. From your perspective as a coffee importer, what are some of the key opportunities that you're seeing?
Okay, I hope not to lose the line again. Well, Germany in particular, but the whole of Europe is very diverse and competitive. So within these terms of reference, I think it's important to note that we don't see the market in Europe is quite saturated. You don't see more people drinking more coffee. That the growth is not coming in terms of discovering new potential in terms of people drinking coffee. But what we see for sure is a migration within the categories. And if you look at, there are two categories I would like to look at. One is the commercial qualities, and the other one is the now becoming more and more sustainable qualities, whatever it means in a detailed definition. Is it organic? Is it certified? Is it with rainforest or alikes or fair trade? So these are kind of different. You see a migration from conventional products going into that segment, into being more sustainable labeled, but also from coffee roasters who are offering products that are more that show that they are taking care of their supply chain. So this is a big trend, I would say. And for now, the challenge we have is in here in continental Europe, and we mentioned this at the beginning, or you mentioned this at the beginning. We have an inflation hitting the road here. We have ramping up prices for gas, and guess what? Coffee is roasted on gas or through using gas mainly in most roasteries for now. So we have an issue at that part, and you have the inflation translating into production items such as packaging, such as transportation, and the likes. So the whole product is becoming more expensive. So the big question mark for now is how will these actual scenarios originating partly through Putin's invasion of Ukraine and all the whole destabilization that comes along with that horrible action. So taking that into consideration, I would say the next opportunity, let's say, if you want to define this as an opportunity, but I would rather put it as an adoption done by roasters, that they need to look for alternatives in terms of things like blends, things like maybe also cheaper products, cheaper coffees. So the rampant push into quality that we saw pre Russia's invasion of Ukraine is now changing for sure. And inflation is also one major part of this situation. So there is a big change in that part of the business. But coffee, on the other side, is a very stable product. We know this from let's say from the history in Europe. During war times, there are three things that are consumed with a lot of certainty. One is tobacco, alcohol, and coffee. So we are pretty sure that it's a resilient product. We see we have customers in the Ukraine who are able to roast coffees and to bring coffee to the people there. So it shows that of course, it's not the perfect situation, but it still works. So that's I think one thing we need to take a look at here in Europe. We are it's I think a situation nobody really wants, but for sure our thoughts and strengths goes to the Ukrainian people and their way of handling this horrible situation. that's from the one opportunity mentioning sustainability products. The other one, of course, is the situation of being able to offering digitalized components to the product. And by saying this is, we see high demand on information. So if people buy a certain product, they want to see they want to see photos, they want to hear the history, they want to know exactly where the coffee is coming from, and ideally they want to have all this information at their fingertips in an online shop. And this is something where they can take a quick decision, they can buy the coffee whenever they need it, and not when office hours are not during office hours, but when they are in their warehouse checking their amount of coffee available, or when they are commuting to work and take the decision to buy coffee. So these are 2-3 components that I would say we need to consider as opportunities. Let's see.
Very good. Thank you, Philip. I'm hearing you talk about, there's still a very strong interest in this market from consumers for sustainable products, right? And also for not just the information. Of course, we've known that customers are interested in having that information at farm level for a long time. That's sort of what we do pretty well, I think, in the specialty coffee industry. But it's the digital access, and I suppose faster, more convenient access to that information that you're seeing has obviously been accelerated over the past few years. That's interesting. Thank you very much for sharing. So we've covered a little bit trends, I suppose. Let's go deeper into trends. The last few years have been quite a whirlwind in terms of consumer behavior in coffee. Like many other luxury items, coffee continues to grow. When it comes to the UK market, we know, for example, from recent reports that, as we were saying earlier, premiumization is a big trend. There's a strong growth in coffee pots. Consumers are interested in sustainable packaging. Fair trade organic labels continue to grow. Subscriptions, of course, are growing. And we know that even though the pandemic disrupted office worker and commuter trade, we know that that's slowly starting to bounce back. And so, Freda, the question's for you. How do these trends, and you covered this a little bit, how do these trends inform your purchasing decisions as the head of coffee at Origin?
I feel for the past 2 years, through the pandemic and through the trend of all the consumptions that we have in the UK, what I noticed the most is the relationship-based coffee has become super important as our business essence, in terms of, because we have a few producers that we've been working since 2011. Through our pandemic, we might stop buying a little bit, but then we started to go back to them. But we understand each other. We're having a really good communication. We have a better, sort of like stronger and more resilient relationship, and then that we are able to provide more than ever to our customers. What does that mean? We are working together to fix the price, for example. We are focusing on providing more. For example, right now, because everyone's worrying about inflation, and also the FX rate, particularly in UK, which I believe we're going to talk about later on. We're trying to focus on more of a solid, easy, drinkable coffee. So that has changed my direction of buying. We're buying more normal coffee, which quality is still the same compared to what we were buying before. But then we're trying to work together with the producers to provide whatever customer is looking for. And I think that is the biggest, sort of like, it's also an opportunity for Origin and also for our customer. We try to provide more subscription for our customer base, from the basic coffee we have to more of a unique and different micro lot. For example, we try to, for example, release one micro lot or feature coffee, we call it, every week to provide and showcase anaerobic fermentation or double soak fermentation or any other really interesting process that coffee is around 86, 87 above coffee to provide to our customer so that they can try to engage and understand what are we doing in specialty coffee particularly. And so that we can actually provide more interesting coffee for our customer. And I think that's what we're trying to work towards to. And then because particularly the market right now is very unstable. So for me, particularly as a coffee buyer, is trying to look for stability in instability, to look for and work with the relationship, to work with the partner that understands what we are standing, what's our standing at, what is our belief and what is our value. And yeah, that is basically sort of like form our way of buying coffee.
That's really interesting to hear, because I heard you say the word normal coffees. And that's, so on one hand, you're saying, I've always loved buying interesting coffees. My clients have always been interested in anaerobic and, sort of different kinds of processed coffees. But at the same time, because the market is the way that it is, I'm also looking to provide a certain group of my clients coffees that they might consider more normal coffees that aren't as crazy or wild.
Yeah, I think the market right now is very challenging, particularly with the FX price. So all of this micro lot coffee 86 plus has been quite expensive and slightly a little bit untouchable for our customer. So what we're looking into is how can we create more of a value coffee for our customer at the same quality that we're having. And that's the biggest challenge right now. Some coffee, we're shifting our buying a little bit. Some coffee will still work with relationship producers, but some, similar to what Philip was mentioning, we try to work on differential. That is something that we never touched base before because it is very unstable. It is very uncertain. But because of the fluctuation right now, we are looking into that.
Very good. Thank you, Freda. Michael, in Europe, the latest reports, as we were, well, actually, we didn't cover this part earlier. Latest reports show that convenience drives growth convenience drives the growth of European single serve and ready to drink coffees. We're seeing that European consumers are increasingly interested in signature blends, single origin, and micro and nano lots. Supermarkets are increasingly looking at specialty coffee. Fine Robusta is increasingly of interest. The certified coffee market continues to grow, as we've talked about a couple of times. And I'm wondering for you, Michael, how do these trends in Europe broadly show up? And of course, the trends that we're hearing about in the UK, because you were mentioning UK is also one of your sort of target countries. What are these trends? How do these trends show up in the types of connections that you're making between your partners at the farm level and buyers in Europe?
I mean, we're seeing these trends as well. I mean, and I have like sort of two perspectives on this. One is not only am I a coffee exporter, but I have equity in an importing company called Ocido Coffee. So actually what Philip is talking about, what Freda is talking about, we all have the same challenge. At origin, inflation is high, especially in Ethiopia, is closer to 35-36% here. So we really worry about how we're going to help our farmers be sustainable. Even though we're seeing the majority of European consumers, even though they still are buying more mainstream, but we're focused on the growing numbers of roasters and consumers they want to know where their products are coming from. They're willing to pay a better price for quality coffee that are traceable, transparent, coffees that are sourced ethically, coffees with good stories, farmer stories, origin stories, and coffees with social impact. So those are the coffees that we're focusing on, and coffees that are mainly relationship coffees. Because when we're meeting with our farmers, because they're worried about who's going to buy their coffee, and they're the most vulnerable people in this whole industry. Even though it's tough for us, at least we have light, at least we have food to eat. But they're really, their lifestyle is, if they don't sell coffee, they don't have food. So the clients the clients we're talking about are people that really not say that they really care about the farmers, but they really actually do care about that relationship, and are doing whatever it takes to help them be sustainable. So even though like these exotic, unique coffees with sexy stories are just pretty dope, but the important thing is the people behind the coffees, and that's the customer base that we're trying to focus on and try to work with. Even though now it's extremely difficult with everything going on in the world, and not only are these issues a problem in the Western world, there are issues that are a problem in developing countries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about Osito? I'm interested in sort of, because you as you described it to me before, you're wearing multiple hats, and tell us a little bit about Osito.
So Osito as a company based in the U.S., based in Connecticut, but they have operations in Colombia. They also deal with cacao, and so a few years ago, we were just trying to help them source coffee. Then we decided that because I just liked the owner and what he stood for, more about relationship coffees. So I decided I really wanted to have a better aspect also on the other side, not just being a producer, because or exporter. I grew up in Baltimore, and having more understanding of the supply chain was very important to me. So just because, honestly, I just decided to invest mainly because I like what they stood for. I like what they stood for in terms of relationship. And even though like coffee is difficult, I mean, it's really hard. Before we started managing washing stations, just going down and visiting co-ops, it's easy to, you take pictures and you leave. But when you stay there, you see all the difficulties and challenges. I mean, you wake up 7 a.m. in the morning and you're done at 4 a.m. I would love Freda and Philip and any other coffee professional to actually come and not just see the exotic looking, but to see the actual real story, which how difficult it is. So Osito and myself, we sort of had the same sort of mindset. How could we use coffee to impact people's lives? And before even I decided to invest in Osito, as they helped a school in the countryside of Ethiopia, they helped raise roughly 10,000, including Sweet Maria and people that we work with and have a really good relationship with. So what we're about, especially here, is about people and about the farmers that we work with, because they're not just faces, they're particularly my friends. So, issues that they face, you take it personally because you know them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Michael. Philip, Liston Biesler trades coffee from across the coffee producing world. I know you've got coffees from Central America, South America, Asia, Africa. What trends are you seeing across countries in terms of preferences or particular attributes in Europe?
It's difficult to answer very concise, because we see quite a broad range of interests from customers, and they vary from micro nano lots, of course, to what is called relationship or direct relationships coffees. This is, of course, one trend that is still there. I would say that Robusta is also coming up, and as high quality Robustas coming out of Brazil, India, Guatemala, Nicaragua, producing beautiful Robustas. But there are, of course, Uganda and alikes in Tanzania. There are beautiful Robusta producing countries, or countries producing beautiful Robustas, and I think this is showing quite some demand, hand in hand also with the pricing situation that we have. We have very high international markets. They're coming lower now, but they have been very high for at least a year. And so the interest for alternatives at a more convenient pricing are there. And I fully understand Michael and what he's saying about the necessity of farmers. And the thing is, it's a very competitive world also from the farming perspective. And you have highly efficient countries such as Brazil, who are able to produce at very low cost of production compared to others, and still offering very good value for money. So coffee is not an isolated product from one only single country or one only single farm. It's internationally traded, coming from different countries, and therefore also being able to offer different price points. So yeah, I think trends or preferences, I would definitely see. We can talk about different varieties like Wush Wush or Geisha Still or others being very much on demand. But this is, it's kind of very niche or small. It's nothing, you cannot sell through the wholesale these nanolots. Yeah, you have people, it doesn't work. At the moment where a business starts to scaling its operations, they need to have product consistency and reliability over a certain time, and that's where it gets a little bit where you have to discover new ways and develop new products.
Thank you very much, Phil. Thank you. That's interesting to hear you say that about Robusta. We've been sort of, at least here in the UK, it's sort of been kind of in the background, or sort of like, oh, Robusta's getting in popularity. From a purely from my own perspective, I don't quite see that, and so it's interesting to hear from you guys that's definitely that continues. I have a question here about certifications, but I'm going to skip it. I'm going to skip it because I think we've talked quite a lot about certifications, and we're getting some really interesting questions from the audience here. So I want to get to those as well, but we can't skip over government policy because what's the word? Dumpster fire? No. Let's talk about government policy. How do you guys expect government policy, for example, the EU Green Deal, to impact your business with customers in Europe, if at all? And I'm going to go here back to Philip with this one. Maybe it's not just the EU Green Deal. Maybe there are other sort of policies. Of course, we talked about inflation that you're keeping top of mind.
Yeah, well, the Green New Deal is the big elephant in the room. Making nervous not only the industry here in Europe, I can tell you that, but also for sure producers and in countries of origination, because nobody really fully understands the rules of engagement here so far, and that brings a lot of uncertainty. And there is the risk. And I mentioned this as a risk. I'm pretty sure it won't happen, but it's still a risk that we need to face or look at. It's that if the restrictions are as tight as they might be through the wording in the due diligence for human rights and the due diligence for deforestation, this could mean that certain countries would not be able to deliver coffee to Europe. This means that certain small and medium-sized companies might not be able to trade or import or even roast those coffees. And this would have as a logical consequence, which is absolutely not intended by the European Union. Yeah, I'm pretty sure about this. This could mean that only the big multinationals, the big brands, and a very narrow amount of countries who are able to provide this kind of complexity, who are able to service this kind of sustainability. It's more than sustainability, honestly, it's more checking the boxes. It's more the CRS logic than truly development of farmers in order to make them better. That's not what these systems are built for. Unfortunately, it's difficult to build systems that make that. There are exceptions, of course. We have some of these in our portfolio solutions. But the important part here is the European Union doesn't want that, but it could become one of the consequences, which is absolutely not intended. So how do we behave there? What can we do? Of course, there is big interaction with the European Union in order to avoid this situation, particularly not for the importers and roasters here in Europe, not only from their side, but most importantly, keeping in mind all the 12.5 million producers of coffee that we have worldwide, that we don't close a door of the major market in the world to these people. So it's a complex topic. We have to bear in mind that the Green New Deal is not made just for coffee. It's made for the whole industry, the whole economical landscape in the European Union. So it's quite a big elephant in the room. There is a simpler mini elephant in the room, the hippopotamus in the room. It's developed by the German. Developed by the German government, and it's a horrible word of 37 letters. Lieferketten-Sorgfaltspflichtengesetz. I'm not gonna repeat it again, but it's quite nasty. 37 letters in a row. and this is basically the intention of this law, starting on January 1st of next year, is to bring the industry in line. It's to bring the message in line and encourage importers of coffee, cocoa, textiles, whatever, to manage their supply chains in a more sustainable manner. Now, this is interesting, but it has also the potential of just becoming only a bureaucratic act of checking boxes. Not what the government intends, but at the end of the day, what can they control? They're going to be checking companies. They start with very big companies, and this is going to be cascading down to medium and smaller sized companies through time. I'm going to type it in the chat so you can have a laugh.
So we can share it. Yes, please. So we can share it with the audience. Thank you very much, Philip. I had not heard about that one from Germany, so that's very interesting. Maybe we can add some resources to the library on green.sca.coffee for people to learn more about that one. Thank you very much. Michael, I'm interested, you talked to us earlier about working both in the UK and in some other countries in Western Europe. Of course, and you shared with us that policy and inflation is definitely something that you're worried about on the Ethiopian side as well. I'm wondering if there's anything related to policy on the European side that's a top of mind for you.
Yeah, I heard about the European Green Deal and also different policies regarding carbon emission and climate change, which is very important. And more European buyers and roasters will be looking for suppliers which can meet this new regulations. Currently, we don't have any issues yet, but in the near future, I'm sure we and the producers we're working with will feel the effects of the different policies that we have to implement in order to bring our products to Europe. But the reality is, again, Africa produces less than 4% of the world's carbon emission. And what I'm really worried about is more and more responsibility will be passed on to the most vulnerable people in the supply chain who contributed actually the least to this issue. So these different regulations and policies will make things more expensive for producers, exporters, and for buyers. And having these policies and regulations to fight carbon emission and climate change is critical. At the same time, it's vital that the costs are shared to make business make sense for everybody in the supply chain. So when these, I'm sure, like Philip said, everybody has good intentions when making these policies, but when policies and regulations from a government perspective, as well as companies are initiated, it is crucial that funding is in place. all these new energies, green energies, renewable energies, they're very, very costly. But because we're seeing the effects of climate change, especially in Africa, temperatures are rising at the highest rate. We're seeing flooding. We're seeing more famine, especially where we are in the Horn of Africa. So it's very, what I really worry about is that more and more of these policies that are meant to do good actually wind up hurting the most vulnerable people in the supply chain. So if we don't have farmers making money, making it a viable business, we're not going to have a business, all of us. And what Philip spoke about earlier is what's really true is we're not efficient, especially in Ethiopia compared to farmers in Europe. But I'm just really worried that more and more regulations is going to be passed on to the most vulnerable people in the supply chain.
Some of the same, so I'm hearing from you, Michael, some of the same worries and some of the same problems that we might see or that we know we see sometimes on the certification side as well.
Exactly.
Right. Costs being passed on to farmers. Thank you, Michael. Freda, when I said dumpster fire earlier, I was referring to this wonderful country that I love, that I've lived in for 8 years. If we had been talking a few weeks ago, a few months ago, we would have been. I would have been asking you about the impacts of Brexit, which they are real. They continue. A few weeks ago, if we had been talking yesterday or even this morning, I would have been talking to you about the Prime Minister's and the Chancellor of the Exchequer's mini budget, which of course. Which is a set of economic policies that saw a sharp fall in the value of the pound sterling against the dollar. The pound hit an all-time low the day after that major announcement. Today, just a few hours ago, not only do we have a new, not only did we get a new chancellor a few days ago, now we don't have a prime minister. So, Freda, how are we going to fix this? No, that's not the question. Freda, as a coffee buyer, what impact does all of this have on your work? I know the day after the announcement, I saw a really good post from you on LinkedIn, which I encourage everybody to follow you and all of you on LinkedIn. Talk to us a little bit about the impact of this fluctuation in the currency and what it's had on your, and sorry, I should say, I know we're at the top of the hour, but if everybody can stay with us for a few more minutes, I promise the rest of this is really good. Stay with us. So Freda, what's going on?
So for UK market, particularly me as a coffee buyer, the most challenging things, not just about coffee price has increased, which luckily for this past few weeks and days, it has come down slightly a little bit, which I sort of relaxed. But the biggest killer for all of us, for a coffee buyer here in the UK, I think particularly in maybe Europe as well, is the FX rate. The FX rate has been really fluctuated. That's focused on coffee price first. We have been working with our coffee producers in the long-term direct relationship. Our coffee price, because of the war, because of inflation, has been increased 21% from last year to this year. And this is working far away from commodity coffee price. This is direct relationship. Now, from now, the currency is another main factor. For example, if I bought a coffee per kilo since last December, cost me £5.20 per kilos of green coffee. Now, if I'm buying the same coffee today, I'm paying the same USD dollar to the producer. It costs me £6.50. Now that's roughly £1.30 differences per kilo of green coffee, which translates to 25% increase if I'm buying any coffee right now using the same USD dollar. That for me is the hardest thing to manage, because we have customer wants to buy coffee. Everyone wants stability, but everything is fluctuating right now. We're trying our best to look into solutions, and we're trying to work with our customers, creating different opportunities for them, for us, and for them as well. We're trying to find recession-proof coffee, which can be really hard sometimes because it is the instability and uncertainty that we're facing right now. And with the gas price has increased, packaging material price has increased, transport fuel price has increased. It really is the hardest moment, I would say, in my buying, like in my career ever. I would thought last year not buying coffee, the logistic containers not showing up was the hardest already. No, this year is another setback and another challenge that we have to get through. So that's a current update right now. I don't even know what's happening. At 4 o'clock today, which it was 6 hours from now on, everything went, the FX rate went really high. That means GBP price converted to USD is started to go really high. And I got really excited because I'm like, okay, I can, buy a little bit more coffee now because the coffee become cheaper. So I can, help customers to acquire more favorable price coffee. But yeah, it's a constant battling right now.
Well, good luck, Freda. We'll see what things look like with the new prime minister and the whole cabinet.
Yeah, I think the key is finding stability in instability. So we have to be patient, and we get there.
There you go. I think you're the next prime minister with that tagline. Thank you, Freda. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Philip. Thank you all so much. We have to end it here. 5 minutes over time, and my colleagues are shouting at me in the chat. Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your experiences with us. A reminder for everybody who's joining us, our audience, go to green.sca.coffee. There you can find more information on Freda, on Philip, and Michael. And if we haven't already added their social media handles, you'll find them there as well. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, so this ends our Q&A session with our panelists today. And this also ends today's Green Coffee Summit program. We've looked at the business of green coffee from a few different angles today, and we've sought to understand value, to identify sourcing trends, to assess the effectiveness of sustainability interventions, and finally to hear some real-time reflections from green coffee professionals on what they're thinking and working on. Before we close, I want to give a final round of virtual applause. Let's see those clapping hand emojis in the chat. To all of our 2022 Green Coffee Summit presenters and panelists, as well as the authors and speakers who contributed to the more than 50 new resources that we've added to the library, again at green.sca.coffee. We will upload everything from this week's event to the library, including the videos. I know that a lot of people have been asking about the videos. All of this will be on there. And we'll continue to populate it with interesting and relevant information in the coming weeks and months. Also, thanks again to our sponsors, title sponsor Barista Attitude, and supporting sponsors BWT Water and More, Mercanta, and Sand Coffee Brazil. Your support, sponsors, has made this event possible. Finally, thanks to all of you at home for tuning in. My name is Vicente Partida, and it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here.